rewrite our constitutional republic into a Marxist state. And of course, as we all know, Barack Hussein Obama, and I will say his name with his full name, is clearly out to destroy our economy and take away all of our personal freedoms. And so, anyway, what document came out of that meeting is called Our Common Future. And in the top right-hand corner, you see the picture that is commonly displaying what sustainable development is. It is social equity, environmental equity, and economic equity. That is Marxism to the max. I'm working on an article right now showing how well this has worked in the continent of Africa. They have the highest HIV/AIDS in the world, even though we as Americans and all of Western civilization has dumped billions into that continent. They have very high malaria rates. Why? Because of the first environmental wacko who wrote The Silent Spring, who said that DDT was killing all the birds and therefore springs were going to be silent. They also have 15 ongoing wars on the continent of Africa today. So ever since 1998, the UN has passed a resolution calling for sustainable development on the continent of Africa, and look what it's producing. Wars, illness, and certainly not a good environment for health or for prosperity. Sustainable development, according to the United Nations, is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. That's why grandchildren are going to the grandparents and saying, you are using too much energy. You are eating too much meat. And I cannot tell you how many times I've spoken to groups and grandparents come up to me and say, thank you for mentioning that because I don't know how to respond to my grandchildren. And I said, well, teach them that it's like a watermelon. It's green on the outside. It sounds so lovely, but on the inside, it's red. And that's Marxism. And help them understand more about what you grew up understanding communism is, because it is not dead. It has just changed colors. Well, actually it has, but it's green on the outside. Now, how it works, of course, is a framework of rules and regulations that limit the behavior of individuals, businesses, and organizations to those activities approved by the government. And that is the ultimate thing, is controlling people. Now, at that UN Convention on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro, that Earth Summit, there were 3 treaties that were created. The UN Convention to Combat Desertification. We're going to go through each of these individually on slides, so you will get more on that. The UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, that's the one that Commissioner Parker is talking about. The meetings that I've attended over the years, and then going to Durban, South Africa in December, Lord willing. And then the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. The one to combat desertification sounds like you're going to help people accommodate to living and even maybe a drip irrigation in desert-like terrain so that you can grow food and animals, right? That's what you would think when you hear that, just thinking logically. Well, it's not. Actually, it grants the UN control over natural resources, 70% of the Earth's land. Now, the U.S. did ratify this. Our U.S. Senate did it without even knowing what they were doing. And the U.S. Senator who brought this package of 34 treaties to the floor of the United States Senate for ratification did not even know that that was part of it. And denied it when Henry Lamb from Ecologic, Henry Lamb from Freedom 21, Henry Lamb, my friend, for many years, he told me that I had to go to Kyoto, Japan, and I said, a what? Oh my, how times have changed. Anyway, it has a companion treaty that wants to go after your water, and I think people in this room are very familiar with that approach as well. And here's the good news. The Senate can withdraw from this. So I am hoping that we can elect enough patriots at the next election after redistricting that we can get get a Senate who would repeal this thing. We don't have to be part of it, and we should not be. The second treaty is the UN Convention on Climate Change, Framework Convention on Climate Change, that was signed. George H.W. Bush was asked, please, begged, don't go to Rio de Janeiro. I promise you, it is not going to be a healthy atmosphere. But for some reason, just like Richard Nixon creating the stupid EPA, George H.W. Bush thought he had to go and out-green the Democrats. You know it was going to help him get re-elected, don't you?
Yeah.
Yep. So it not only was signed by George H.W. Bush, it was ratified by the United States Senate the same year. And then his son, or pardon me, then it was Bill Clinton in office in 1997 who had to deal with the Kyoto Protocol. And I can tell you that it was going bust. It was not going to go anywhere in Kyoto until Al Gore decided to go over and save the day. And it was so funny because he came over and he told the American delegates, after the U.S. Senate had said, don't you dare bring home a treaty if it is going to hurt our economy or if it is going to be a treaty that is not going to be adopted universally. You cannot single out some nations like the USA and apply it to us and not all the others. So don't bring that home. Well, he went over and he told the U.S. delegation to be flexible. And we all scratched our heads and said, what does that mean? Well, it meant sell out the USA. And so I can just tell you, I was in The Hague in 2000 when the election happened, and you remember that we didn't know if it was going to be President Al Gore, imagine. Oh my gosh. Or it was going to be President George W. Bush. And so they literally closed the Framework Convention at that point because it meant the world's difference if it was going to be Al Gore or if it was going to be George W. Bush. And George W. Bush had to fight this every year at every major meeting. This is the third treaty that came out of that Rio meeting called the Biological Diversity Treaty. It was signed by Clinton as the one before was. It has not been ratified, and the reason it was not, you need to understand, is because Michael Kaufman from the state of Maine had just finished his doctorate on this very subject. And so when it came before the U.S. Senate, he was looking for a U.S. senator who would take his arguments and his map and show the senators what this would do. And as you see, the red areas are off limits to humans. So you can see all the property rights that would have been lost. And we as humans would have been relegated to living on human islands. That was the plan. Well, he found a willing U.S. Senator, Kay Bailey Hutchison. And she took his arguments to the floor, and it was withdrawn and has not come up since. And so we're hoping that it stays gone. However, we know that it's still being implemented through executive orders and through federal grants. Okay, so we're still fighting.